Hello and welcome to PTC Cast episode 50. Today, Chris and I talk about the different pillars of fitness and wellness and how it's important to fill each one of these buckets and be sure that you're addressing each aspect and avenue of your fitness to some extent. We also answer a question at the end about having a discrepancy between either side on your body. We've got somebody dealing with a bicep and shoulder that's not quite as developed as the other side and wants to know what to do about it. So this episode is brought to you by ProgressThroughChange.com, where you can get your 4 Easy Habits for Fat Loss guide. I would highly recommend you go check it out. It's about 15 seconds to download, and it will really change the way that you look at fat loss, man. I'm really confident that if you can adapt if you can adapt these habits and do them consistently over time, man, I'm very confident you'll be in a position where you are leaner, you are healthier, and you are in a better position to achieve a body transformation, man. So check that out. It takes you 5 seconds to get. I highly recommend it. Enjoy the show.
Do I sound good?
Yes. Do I sound good?
You sound crispy, bro.
Great, man. 50 episodes. What have you learned?
Everything. The ins and outs of the universe.
I haven't learned anything.
No.
So that puts us in 2 very different spots.
You just pour the coffee on the thing.
Yeah, and this is it. We're done. Tapped. Dang, but 50 episodes, man. I mean, that's almost a year's worth of weekly episodes. Yeah. I imagine if we hit every single week, we would be at a year.
Yeah.
But
that'd be 56, right?
Yeah, we haven't missed too many, though.
I don't think so, no.
So I've been proud of our consistency.
Yeah, bro. And it's all up to you. I am not the consistent one. We all know that.
I mean, yeah, but we make it happen, man. So we make it happen. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about incorporating different modalities of fitness, different points of fitness into your routine, right? So there's different things when it comes to health and wellness fitness, right? It's not just strength. It's not just aesthetics. It's mobility. It's stamina. It's cardio. It's everything within all of that. It's stability. Mm-hmm. It's muscle all these building. It's all these little like sub brackets that like people don't really talk about as often or aren't as evident or aren't as trained or aren't as measured and are maybe looked at as not as important. And, you know, in certain cases, maybe depending on who you are or what your goal is. But I definitely feel like, you know, you want to have some sort of experience or points put into something, right? It's like you're playing an RPG video game and you put all of your points into one thing and then that leaves you super weak or it leaves you super, you know, slow or, you know what I'm saying? Like it leaves you with a total blind spot.
You're going to have some downfalls.
Yeah. So I feel like it's one of those things, man, where you're like, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So I feel like it's worth, you know, maybe not diverting a ton of your time to each individual sub bracket, but at least exploring what those things are and seeing if you're severely lacking there. So I was kind of wondering, like, what are some things that you do that are not maybe like part of a normal like gym bro routine?
I'd say the biggest thing is cardiovascular training, because you know a lot of the people that I train with at Destination, they don't do cardio, and if they do, you know, it's maybe walking on the Stairmaster for like 20-30 minutes, which is cardio. But I like the higher intensity cardio, so I'd say something different that I do is like, you know, boxing or running or jump rope, things like that necessarily won't, you know, help me build muscle. Yeah. But, you know, it'll help me with my cardiovascular system, which is something that I want to do.
And you're not talking about like low intensity, steady state. You're talking about like high intensity, high heart rate, high output. Like
Like I really like the higher intensity cardio. And I think I told you this, but I'm actually trying to like find some CrossFit gyms and get a membership there, and actually probably stop my membership at Destination Dallas. And
so you're just trying to flip your training right on its head.
Trying
to do something totally.
I mean, it's just so much more fun. So
okay,
yeah.
So you're looking for the enjoyment factor,
and you know, looking better.
Sure.
Obviously, you know, doing cardio, being at a deficit in calories, that'll make my body just look better.
Sure.
So and healthier, and
yeah. So long as you can handle it. CrossFit is
as long as you can handle it. Yeah.
CrossFit is a big asterisk for me. I like to poke fun at it. I'm definitely not a hater towards it or anything like that, but it's definitely a big asterisk for me depending on who you are and what your goal is. But, you know, I would say someone like you who's been a well-rounded athlete for a while, like I definitely think it might be something worth exploring. So I think that'll be a cool thing to check out. And it's funny that that's the thing you brought up, was kind of that like high intensity cardio, because that's, I would say, the biggest thing I'm missing personally. So
Yeah.
outside of like high rep front squats, or like a tough set of lunges, or like outside of like a few big sets within my resistance training sessions, I would say I'm never really like venturing into those high heart rate zones, because the majority of my cardio is just walking core pre-training. And I would say that that's low intensity to moderate intensity max, depending on how fast I'm going, And so usually I'm doing about 20 minutes a day there. But it's funny that that's the one that you brought up, because again, outside of that resistance training, that's not really something that I'm exploring. So there's the thing I need to put some points into and to check out.
Yeah, and it's crazy, like the benefits from it. Like I'll say right off of the bat, one of the biggest things from the higher intensity cardio sessions is the amount of just calmness that I have, all day, every day. Like I don't really get high strung or anything. And I think it's because, if you're going 30 to an hour long of, your heart rate being over 160, like you're going to be pretty calm. And, I'm 225 pounds and my heart rate is sub 60 beats a minute. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's like one of the biggest things that I like from the higher intensity cardio, is just the calmness throughout the day.
Kind of the shape it puts your heart in, and it doesn't require you to always be, jump into 120 heart rate just to get up a flight of stairs.
Yeah,
or,
like that sucks,
to get up
man.
and down. Yeah, no, for sure, man. I mean, I've definitely seen it, and it's funny that once you notice it, you start to notice it elsewhere. So like, you kind of notice people around you, like, get up kind of slow, or, they move a little too quick, and then there's a little huffing and puffing, and it's like, dang, man, like that's definitely something you want to be training, because if it's just like normal life stuff, like, again, getting up and down, or, moving a bag of dog food or whatever it is, like you don't want to be winded or tuckered out from stuff like that. So I definitely feel like it's worth like training those things and exploring those areas so that you can do those things, So one thing that I would say I do that is not quite, I would say popular enough amongst gym bros like ourselves is yoga and some things dedicated to mobility. Yeah. So I am definitely no like expert or master in this field at all, man, in any way, shape, or form. It is something that definitely kicks my butt, and I just do like a simple YouTube class. So I'm not even like doing an actual instructor or anything like that. So some of my stuff could be a little bit whack, but I'm usually just doing anywhere from like 10 to 20 minutes. I try to do daily, but I'm still working on building that routine a little bit more. But what I have found is it incredibly improves your ability to resistance train. And that's really like, that's ultimately the biggest seller for me, was being able to sink those squats lower, being able to reach deadlifts into deeper positions, being able to, reach presses and rows and pull-ups into these different positions. And, your body can actually get into these different end ranges that you wouldn't be able to otherwise if you're just going through a standard, weight training protocol. So I've definitely seen a lot of extra benefits there for just adding a quick, 10 or 20 minutes a day. Usually I'll do it like at the end of the morning walk or something like that. But that's something that it's really funny, man. Like once in a blue moon, I'll throw it in for a client, and just seeing like the difference it makes in the way that they train is pretty significant. So it's definitely something that I think is, it goes under people's radars a little bit too often.
Yeah. And, I know it definitely goes over my radar. Like I don't know if I'm always telling you, but, my left hip is messed up. Don't really have good range of motion anywhere. I probably can't touch my toes with, my legs being straight. Like this right here, I'm not even locked out, and it's already
before
tight.
You do CrossFit, man.
Yeah, man.
Check that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, from the high intensity training, I haven't gotten injured yet from all these tight muscles and lack of mobility. But that's the hardest thing for me when it comes to the mobility, is just the routine. Like just saying that I'm going to do it and then committing to a consistent routine, because you're right. The effects from it are really noticeable. Like I remember when I was a a big power lifter, the 365 pounds. When I was at my strongest, I stopped being able to reach depth in my squats.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and one of my friends, Sean,
Was your belly your belly just gets in the way?
No, my
like
hips were
just too tight.
They were just too tight. Like I literally couldn't. I would have 800 pounds on my back, and it would not go under.
Crazy.
Yeah, man. And what he had me do was Bulgarian split squats, but not for the sake of muscle building, but for the sake of range of motion.
Yeah, training those end ranges. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, training those end ranges. And I remember after 5 sets of 5 reps or something on each leg, I was able to hit depth easily. And that was just from warming up with a mobility exercise. Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't stick with doing any of that, but I didn't expand on it. Like I'll still do Bulgarian split squats before my squat sessions, and some mobility exercises for other lifting movements that I'm trying to train. But it's not something that I have a big importance on, and the consequences are there.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's a kind of a perfect segue. I had mentioned doing the yoga, but another thing as well is training those end ranges significantly within your resistance training, right? So learning how to contract out of those positions when that muscle is really lengthened and stretched out, I have found makes a significant difference in people's ability to execute on other lifts as well, right? So a lot of the times I'll have people do lunges or split squats before they go squats or deadlifts or things like that, right? So that way their hips are a little bit more ready, their lower back is ready, their knees, ankles, everything's ready to go through those movements because they've been primed, right? It's funny that you pick split squats, because that's my personal favorite for lower body as well. So if we're going to pick some exercises like that, just to give people some examples, we're talking about things like walking lunges, one leg RDLs, split squats. If we're talking about upper body, maybe things like pull downs, or training like a deep range of motion on like a dumbbell press that actually fits. There's different exercises across the board, but it's really being sure that you're training muscles in a stretched position, not just in like a shortened, contracted position. So it's being sure that your quad training is a deep goblet squat with a heel elevation and not just leg extensions, or being sure that your bicep training is a inclined dumbbell curl with your elbow behind you, and not just like a preacher curl, where your biceps is just getting tightened. So it's really important that you train those lengthened, stretched out positions for every muscle.
Yeah, because that's half of the movement, yeah? Like, you have half of it for the contraction, and then the other half, I don't know, expansion.
Well, so you have your concentric and your eccentric, right?
Okay,
so you have your concentric on the way up and the eccentric on the way down, but you can train that in different positions. So for example, with your bicep, a lot of guys like to do just preacher curls, right, with their elbow elevated. Well, when you elevate your elbow, because your bicep is also what's called a shoulder flexor, or it lifts your elbow up as well, your bicep gets a little bit tighter when that elbow is elevated already. And then when you start flexing it up here like a preacher curl, it gets even tighter. So this is the tightest position your bicep can get in, is when that elbow is super elevated and flexed. If you do some curls with that elbow behind you, like an inclined dumbbell curl where your chest is puffed up, or even just like a standing easy bar curl where that bicep is a little bit more stretched out and then contracting back here, it's a little bit better for that muscle to be able to reach some of those stretched positions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and those are the ones where you're going to be doing like 10 pounds.
Exactly.
15 pounds,
it's the ones
like
that,
50
especially if you're doing it controlled, and exactly. Yeah. So I'm glad that you brought up the split squats, because I think that's a big modality as well. So we've talked high intensity cardio, we've talked mobility,
and the low intensity cardio.
Yeah, low intensity cardio is a big one as well. I think it's important just for like daily activity. To be honest, in my opinion, if you're not just walking every day, what are you doing, man?
Yeah,
just go walk every day and you got that base hit. If you got a dog, do that, man. If not, for your mental health.
Those morning walks.
Yeah, I'm telling you, every day. But I would definitely consider that one to be a staple, especially if you're someone who's working on body composition. You really want to work on keeping that body fat down, helping your body deal with calories, and helping your body use energy efficiently. You got to be walking every day, man. At least 10 minutes a day. You make that a hard minimum, and you'll be able to notice some change pretty quick. So I would say, honestly, in my opinion, that kind of covers the baseline there. If you hate walking, get an elliptical, get a spin bike or something, do 10 minutes a day.
That's actually what I'm trying to get right now. I'm going to go pick up a elliptical to start doing, like 30 minutes of elliptical riding in the morning. You used to do that, right?
Well, I have a spin bike in the
out
garage.
in the sun?
Yeah. So I have a spin bike in the garage. When I was prepping for my last show, I was doing an hour on the bike every day. So I would roll the bike out into the sun and go for an hour. Cool. Yeah, it was a good time, man, for sure. So I would highly recommend. I'm looking at getting one of those walking treadmills right now, actually. Okay. Where it's just like a little mini treadmill that it's like pretty light and easy to move around. It doesn't go very fast, but you can just walk on it.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah. So if I could like put one at my desk, or like I could.
What you need is a
PlayStation
standing desk.
5 while I'm walking.
Yeah.
I need a standing desk.
You need a standing desk.
That's not a bad idea, but I stand all day Monday through Thursday at the gym, so I feel like when I'm sitting Friday and Sunday at home, it's not too bad.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's how I justify it to myself. But yeah, no, a standing desk wouldn't be a bad idea. But yeah, so those are kind of all the immediate ones.
I'd say the one that pops into my mind that people don't think about a lot is the core stability training.
Yeah,
sure. I bring up beltless squats. And the compound movements, those are a little bit more risky.
Sure.
But I've found that if you can't do them, those are the most effective. The beltless squats, the beltless deadlifts, the planks, body weight planks, Russian twist, ab rollouts. Like any time that I've had, bad lower back pain, it's always been because my core was weak at that moment. And then, I just hammer those that core stability exercises, and it just feels so much better.
Yeah, if I were to give like a general shotgun statement to a full core stability thing for someone, it would be a spine flexion, a spine extension, and then some sort of spine anti-rotation. So to break that down a little bit, when we say flexion, think like a crunch or like a reverse crunch where you're lifting your hips, or even like a leg raise where we're getting a little bit of hip flexor involved. So that's like a flex or like a crunch down, right? We have an extension as well. So that could be like a lower back extension. If you know what a Superman is, where you're laying on your stomach, arms laid out, and you're reaching up. There's some different variations like that. You could even make an argument that deadlifts kind of count as an extension. And then you have like a spinal anti-rotation or a lateral flexion movement. So that could be anything like a side plank where your body wants to bend down to the side, but your core is holding it up tight. You could do like a dead bug where you're laying on your back and you're reaching and extending the opposite arm and opposite leg. You could do plank shoulder taps, something along those lines. So yeah, I would agree, core stability, and not only core stability, man, but when we talk about stability, we want to talk about it around other joints as well. So we also have shoulder, hip, knee, ankle, right? All of these joints require stability as well. So really one of the best ways, in my opinion, to train stability is just to pause in end ranges in these free weighted exercises, right? So whether that's a walking lunge, between each stride, maybe pause for 1 second at the bottom, pause for 1 second with the other leg in the air. If you're doing a dumbbell overhead press, pause for 1 second at the bottom, pause for 1 second up in the air. There's a lot deeper challenges we can create with stability, of course. But I've always found that that's a very simple way to kind of get yourself a baseline going, is learn to really control weights within space.
Yeah, and I'm sure that most people don't even have that baseline filled. Like I know as of right now, I don't have that baseline filled. All of my training is kind of weird right now. I'm doing this and then I'm doing that. And then, there's no, I guess, I don't know if congruency is the right word, but there's no like harmony in it.
Yeah.
It's kind of just, I'm going in, having fun, doing what I want to do. And then,
For sure. One thing I would say is I kind of feel like unless you're someone who's hyper type A, like you're probably not going to ever have a perfect hold on all of these things all at once, right?
Yeah.
Like unless you're someone who's just going to focus on their fitness for like 60 hours a week, which is absolutely ridiculous. So like, of course it's going to like move in waves. Like I'm probably always going to be someone who prioritizes resistance training, like at least until I'm 40, 45, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I'm probably not going to be someone who's doing an hour of cardio a day unless I'm, prepping for a show and it's a small period of time or something like that. You know what I mean? So point being there, like there's always going to be different points in how much you're putting into each one of these buckets. But I do think it's important that each is like explored, I'd be lying if I said my yoga is always totally consistent, or my Kora walks are always totally consistent. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's kind of always moving, but it's definitely important that you're entertaining some of these subjects, you know?
Do you have a hierarchy of which one is like, or, you know, what's most important to fulfill?
For me, I think it's just always specificity.
Okay.
So
It's
if,
gonna
you know,
depend.
me, who I am, I like to train for bodybuilding. So for me, it's going to be resistance training. And then, you know, maybe tied to that is going to be mobility and cardio. You can make an argument for one or the other right after that. And then it's kind of like, you know, stability after that, because you know what I mean? So you kind of like build your hierarchy from there. But maybe if you're someone who, you know, is looking to develop a foundation of stability and mobility, maybe you're somebody who prioritizes those things. Maybe your training looks a little bit different, right? Maybe it's a little bit more athletic oriented. Maybe you're doing more free movement exercises. Maybe you're doing some like explosive style training. I use that with really big air quotes. But does that kind of make sense? As I feel like it just depends on what's the most important to you. Do that thing first, and then kind of prioritize them out from there. So I would always say, like, spend the most time doing the thing that matters the most to you, and then work it back from there. So, you know, if you're somebody who has quite a bit of fat to lose, maybe you want to put your cardio at that number one, and then your weight training second. Maybe if you're somebody who has, you know, only a little bit of fat to lose and is somewhere kind of in between, maybe you want to put that weight training first and then your cardio second. So there's different ways that, you know, you can work all of this, man. But I think that hierarchy is going to be different depending on who you are and what you're trying to do.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think the exact same thing. I wanted you to break it down, baby. Break it down.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
So I think that's everything I got there.
I think that's everything that I got there too, actually.
Cool. Okay, sweet. Let's answer a question. Help. One bicep and shoulder is smaller than the other. What should I do?
One bicep.
One bicep and shoulder is smaller than the other. So
November's almost here.
what does that have to do with it?
Not gonna say it.
All right, man. So moving on from that, we got a couple of ways to address that, man. So we got a couple of ways to address that. So number one, I think it's important to know that humans are not symmetrical in any way, shape, or form. Look at yourself in a mirror. There's something different about you if you draw a line down your middle. So it is totally okay if you have some sort of dissonance in your tissues. That's normal. I would say more people have a difference than do not. Moving on from there, it kind of depends on the severity of the difference. And I will also say that because we're all biased human beings, you're going to think yours personally is terrible. It's probably in the normal range if I had to take a shot in the dark. But, you know, unless it's like hyper glaring, one thing I would say you can do is you can kind of address the mobility of the joints surrounding the area. So you said arm and shoulder, so I'm going to tell you to check out your stability and mobility of your scapula on each side. So what can each side do, and what is each side capable of individually of each other? You know, when you set up on a bench press or even a dumbbell press where you're lying down and relatively stable, it's easy to just kind of brace yourself or twist into a position where, you know, one side might not have to work as hard as the other, one might, you know, not have to stabilize as hard as the other. And so you sort of develop this dissonance over time. And so if you can learn a way to sort of identify those things or pull them out, whether that's like, hey, I'm going to do a one-arm dumbbell bench press. So I'm going to lay back here on the bench. I'm going to push my lower back down into the bench. I'm going to keep my spine nice and straight, push my feet into the ground, and go into a dumbbell press and see if I can do that without falling off the bench or my shoulder exploding. So there's tons of different exercises, and it's impossible for me to say like over a podcast what specifically like this person should do. But I would, if I were you, I would hop on YouTube, look up scapula stability challenge, see if you notice a difference between either side, and then see if you can find a way to improve upon the side that is lacking. Because I would say one of those sides is missing either stability or mobility, or maybe something even closer to that side. So if we're talking about the scapula, we could be even maybe looking at the spine. But anyways, point here being like we need to sort of check out what can that thing do independent of the other thing, right? And where can we expose it for being weak or behind or lagging? And how do we fill that in? How do we make that stronger? How do we make that more stable? How do we make that more mobile, if you can make it more mobile? So point there being like, figure out what it can honestly do. Check your ego at the door. find some shit that'll really challenge it and build it from there.
Yeah. And then be aware of, you know, how it feels too. Like I've talked a couple times about my left shoulder or left scapula being messed up. And, you know, I feel this dude's pain. You know, it may not, this arm may not look smaller than this arm.
Yeah.
But whenever I'm doing like shoulder exercises or chest exercises, my left trap takes over for my shoulders. And I didn't notice that until a couple weeks ago. And so now whenever I'm doing chest training or shoulder training, I have to purposely
It'd be like hyper conscious.
Be hyper conscious of my left arm, or else, you know, I'll roll forward and, you know, I'll be benching like that or doing shoulder raises like that.
Yeah.
Like, and one of the way that I found that out is because I started doing shoulder raises and this shoulder would get really pumped and then this trap would get really pumped. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense.
There, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's important to say that like that's relatively normal, man. Like throughout all the training we all go through and how imperfect we all are, just in that, you know, there's so much to know about anatomy and training, and you know, it's just going to happen, you know. So it's important to know that it's normal, and like it's definitely, you know, it's changeable, man. Like if you address it and you're hyper focused on it and you don't let it continue, right? If you don't continue to practice those bad habits, those wrong positions, then, you know, it might be something that you can fix or change over time. One thing I will say is I know some people's immediate reaction is just to double up, right? So they'll be like, well, I'm going to do double the volume. And it's like, look, man, dude, more crap is just more crap.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many times I got to say it, but it's like, if it's not doing what you want it to do, doing more of it will not do it for you. So I just can't, I can't drive that point home enough. Like I would not encourage you to start doing more or less on one side or the other. And definitely don't do that dumb shit like loading the bar heavier on one side than the other.
Ooh, that hurts. Yeah.
So anyways, man, you know, point there being, it's normal. Don't stress too bad about it, but definitely check it out and challenge yourself about it. You know, don't be blind to it.
Yeah.
Because eventually I think it's one of those things that it'll show its head. You know, if you're somebody who is pounding the barbell exercises, or is pounding, you know, some exercises where you're twisting yourself into a position, or you're finding some way to air quotes cheat even without knowing it, you know, I definitely think that eventually something's going to rear its head, whether it's a tendonitis or a bursitis or a pop or a tear, you know, knock on wood. But point here being, like, don't ignore it, man. If you notice it now, there's a reason. Let's see if we can address it, but try not to freak out about it because it's relatively normal.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Cool. We can wrap this one up there. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you in the next one.